Hey kids! Welcome to the Stylus Rumble Animation Time theme. So today, I figure I should probably get on finishing this blue animation and bring it to a polish. When last we were around, I was just starting to do the breakdowns and getting from the key pose place to the animation-y sort of place. In the background now is a time lapse of me finishing that part up, because I don't think there's a lot that I can say there. It's kind of like you tween and you try and make your best guess on good timing and stuff and get all that under control. Some people have a really good grasp of timing, so they can go right from the key stage into some great timing. They have a good sense of it, or they gain that sense over years of animating characters. Because I've effects animator about 99% of the time, I never really gained that skill. So even though I've been animating for a decade, I still have to go back and revise my timing. It's not something I have a sense for, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you're the type of person who can go right into it, that's great, and if you're not, that's good too, as long as you know that your first timing may not be your best timing. Special effects have a little bit of a different timing sense, and often you're going straight ahead. And I find straight ahead a little bit more intuitive for me, but it doesn't really work for character animation all the time. And especially in a studio setting, you have to work in a pose-to-pose method so that you can get feedback on your scenes and stuff. So that's the method that I'm using here, because this is what you'd be expected to do in a studio. Once you've kind of established yourself in a studio and you're in more of a senior position, then you are able to work a little bit more independently. Your supervisor will say, okay, I don't need to see your keys anymore. I trust your judgment on those. If you have any questions, come to me. And then once you have your animation done, I'll let you know if there's anything that needs to be changed at that stage. So that's something that you work up for. When you first start in a studio, they want to see every single step of the process, just so that they are making sure that you're staying on model, you're staying within the style of the show that they're establishing, things of that nature. So pose to pose is absolutely essential if you want to work in a studio. If you're working at home, doing your own stuff, do whatever works for you. But I do recommend trying both methods and putting in a good effort. It's such a good skill to have, and being able to mash the two things together. So starting with pose to pose for the big character action, and then using more of a straight ahead method for details or cloth, things like that afterwards, layering your animation. That's really a great way to be able to work, where you have choices for different things that you're doing. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so now we're in a real-time animation-y position. I'll play the scene to what I have so far. All right, so this is, it's animated, but it's certainly leaving a lot to be desired. It's not particularly, nothing crazy is going on. He's just moving from pose to pose. And then he's got sort of an awkward walk cycle going out because I got tired towards the end. So there's lots of things that can be improved on this. From down, he goes up like this. This bothers me a little bit. I think that a lot more can be done here on the stretch pose. So that might be a good place to start, just because it's really obviously, it's just not working out here. So even though this, it's moving, it's doing the thing I asked him to do, there's certainly a lot of room for improvement. And then there's also this hair poofy. I want that to have a lot more life, so especially when he's going from here to here, that to be a little bit more bouncy, that hair poof. And then on this head turn, we could have a little bit more action happening on the poof. The turn is okay. There's some little bumpies in the shoulders. This tick, tick, tick. So I feel like the turn itself, it works, but it could have more life. So I think I want him to hold on this side a little more and then have a bit more zip coming out. So there's tons of things we could do. So I'll put in about an hour and just polish this up and see how far we can get. Also having a wiggly pop, because it's been that kind of week. All right, so the first big thing I'm going to work on is this swoosh. This from here, the scrunch. Let's start there. Let's beef that up a little bit. Let's get some big scrunch in there. Bring his shoulder in a bit. So he's getting some good shoulder scrunch. And so this is the transition pose. So from here, scrunch, then it's there, and then here. So I'm looking for something between here and here that's gonna make it look a little bit faster and give it more impact. So right now his head is sort of tilty like this. I'm not going to go crazy like as far as a smudge, But let me just throw in a crazy frame just for a laugh. All right, so if you're gonna put in a real crazy smudge, you could drop in an overlay here. Make sure you name it. So I'm gonna call it overlay blue. And I could easily just throw in some swooshy frames. See, so his head is actually floop, getting a smear in there. So the way you get this kind of old-fashioned look is by throwing in an overlay and just drawing it in there. I'm going a little bit extreme on this, considering the movement itself doesn't warrant this at all. But I just want to show you guys, for a laugh, what it would look like. You have a big stretchy nose, burp, and hide his other nose. So if I was going to throw something in like this, I'd be really aggressive about it. Like, I wouldn't muck around changing each piece one at a time. I go in and just slap some drawings in there. Whoa! Because now you can see, flip, that single frame, and it's not even held for the 2 frames. It's going to give you a lot more movement. So with this little head turn, it's probably not warranted, but if you're getting very cartoony, this is a super fun, awesome way to just slam in some personality in there. So don't do every single eyelid and every eyepiece. Just put a drawing over the top and draw right over it. Like, don't be shy. You could even do it in a little bit more of a dry brush effect. You could go into the texture brushes, but I feel like that's a little bit crazy. But another way to do it is to put in just swooshy lines like this and make sure that they're following the right direction and they make sense for the movement themselves. All right, so that's another sort of a way you could go about it. And if we watch this one, so you can get that punchy movement, and you can't see it, so even though this feels a little bit crazy, it's still going to give you something. And if you really wanted to, you could come in here. Don't be afraid of your modules. And we've got our directional blur. So this is going to give us a motion blur sort of thing. And we're going to need kind of a weird angle, but let's just ramp up the effect here. You can see where it's going, about 110 degrees. And you can give yourself a smear or like smudgy brush stroke sort of look. And because it's a single frame, I mean, you're not going to see it, but you're going to feel it. I mean, you can kind of see it. That's as far as you could go, but I feel like this isn't a cartoony enough situation for that to be warranted. So instead, what I'm going to do is just use the head itself, and I'm just going to stretch it out a little bit. And it's going to be a little bit less severe than if we'd gone through and done a crazy drawing like we were just playing around with. We can bring the poof way down because that's pretty flexible. Actually bring the whole hair down, bring his ear down a little bit, not too much because it's kind of on the outside of the movement. And we want to make sure none of our pieces are broken. So if we've been playing around with his chin, make sure it's still lining up with this piece. You don't want to break his face, you just want to distort the face. It's a little better. So this face, you can see it's off model. We've stretched the features out a little bit, brought this hair down. If I was feeling super anal, I might even go in and make sure that this curve here is a little bit nicer, do an extra drawing to make sure that's super tight, but I don't feel like for a single frame it's going to be too big a deal. Let me bring in my little dealies. And these little triangles that are kind of hard to see, you can drag in, so it's only going to show you a little piece of your animation when you do your playback. Some people go and type it in up here. I just drag the little triangles. So the face, I think, is working a little bit better. The eye is still bothering me. It goes from down here. And you can see that eye pop. Boop, boop. This just has an extra little frame in here. I accidentally put something on the middle frame. Boop. Just tied that up along the way. And now this guy, we don't want him to be smaller than our other pupil. And I'm going to make sure that that keyframe is improved across the board here as it travels. Let's get rid of those things. There you go. Alright, I think we can do a little bit more with the hands too. Let's see, we've got our squat pose. Oh, his shoulder's supposed to be scrunching. I don't feel like his shoulder's scrunching. Alright, so let's bring, instead of this coming over, let's bring it up. We're actually going to try and change the perspective on this. So we can see if a skew will work. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. I think in this case, because it's a fairly simple prop, it's going to work. And the bottom of this prop, even though the hands and stuff are coming up, the bottom of the prop is sitting very still. Just watch. See how it's almost like it's glued to something? That's something we don't want, because why would it do that? Doesn't make sense. There we go. So now he's got a little bit of an up. I feel like this wrist should come in farther. I want to get more, see his weird little vestigial thumb back there. That might be a little too far. So he brings it up and then down. I think the perspective on this is quite awkward too. Because think about it, if his body is turning more towards this direction, then this would also be coming around more. So, because it'd be facing his head, whereas right now it's facing more this direction. So his hands are twisted around. I don't like that. So let's make a pose similar to the head, where we're starting to drag that head along. We could do one for the hands as well. Let's use our onion skin to see the difference. And I'm going to put I'm going to change this so that's not going as far on the first one, but it's going to be more distorted. So even though it's not moving as far, because we're going to stretch it, it's going to feel like it's moving faster, if that makes sense. It's kind of a trick on the mind. Alright, so I feel like that's working a little bit better. Getting a little bit more energy out of it. So even though it's the same 3 frames, just by making that center frame a little bit stretchier, I'm getting more out of it. I could get more settle on these shoulders, but I feel like that's not a huge issue. We're going to work big to small. So we'll just see what our next biggest issue appears to be. And then if we have time in our schedule to fix something else that's a little bit more minor, that's something we could do. All right, so the next thing I'm not so keen on is here. He goes from here. He's looking around a bit and kind of sneaking off. This is all very even. I'd be better for sure. This is how I would work. If I knew I only had an hour in my schedule to patch this guy up, I wouldn't spend an hour working on the thumbs, and I wouldn't spend an hour working on the eyelids. I'd get the biggest movements first. What can I improve the best? And then give yourself 5 or 10 minutes to make sure that there's no real, like, dirty secrets happening in the eyes or the eyebrows, like little nitpicky things. If there's things that are actually wrong, those have to be fixed first. So if your eye direction, for example, was wrong, that's something that needs to be addressed. But things like manipulating the eyebrow, just a few pixels here and a few pixels there, leave that to the absolute last thing. That way, if you get burnt out and you're like, nah, I don't care anymore, the worst of it has been fixed. So here, I feel like I want him to linger more. So maybe keep some of that shifty eye stuff, but have him be a little bit still so that you can see it. It's got a little bit more impact. And then this movement from here to here, we can compress that towards the end. All right, so let's detach his head. Is that a good idea? Let's do it. Let's be brave. Okay, so we're gonna be real brave on this one. All right, and we're gonna pick out the things we like without the head, because like I said, I want to keep that shifty eye movement and stuff, some of the expressions, so we can just detach, actually, better than detaching the whole head. Let's reattach the head. Let's just disconnect his face. So now we can get the head movement, but any of the facial stuff we've mucked around with is going to stick around. And then if we have problems there later, we can see how that works. But let's be aggressive. Yeah. Here, this part, there's a little tick there. What's that? Tick, tick. Tick, tick. Let's see what poses we like. So this one, those two are pretty good. We're gonna grab these all from our master peg on the inside of the group. So remember, we got our translate and stuff hiding out here. These inside are just poses of the character. So these two I like, but that one's not so good. So let's get rid of that one. Whoa, look at his weird fingers. That's something we can fix later. Dude, this one's pretty good. This one's the same. Boop, that one's the same. That's weird. So here to here, that's okay. Then here to here, his body's in the same spot. See that? This whole area is like hitting a wall. Boom. Wall. Wall. So let's get rid of this. But he's got the front head. So let's steal the front head. Burp. Bring it over here. Cut out this one. And this is why I work out of the network, because now I'm back up to this guy. Boop. We're going to get rid of that one. Don't need him. Boop. There's some hand muckety mucks we're going to have to fix. Not a big deal. Take the poses I like. I'm just going to mash them over here towards the end. because we wanted that big movement to happen faster and towards the end. Now he can be still here. I can get rid of all these jitter poses. Don't know why that's jittery. So here he's got a little bit of a hold, and then this part over here is going to happen faster. So now the movement, before that was stretched out from 50 to 80, so 30 frames long. Now we've got it over 12 frames. So this end part, still very slow. Let's be honest. Yep, that's not a fast turn. 12 frame turn? That's like 1,000,000 frames. But it's half the speed it was before, already instantly better. Glad we didn't settle for that other trash. Jeez, Tracy. Gotta cut down on the wiggly pops. So let's reconnect his face and see if that has anything good to say. Cringe is kind of doing a little dance. Cringe, not beep, 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 beep. What's up with that? Do we like the cringe? Feel like let's, So now it doesn't work as well because we had this kind of squat down pose. So I think the cringe should happen here. I like this face. But let's bring our cringe mouth over there. Ooh. And his mouth has gotten really off model, super duper low. Burp. And then it comes back up kind of where it's meant to be. I think I'm going to bring that mouth back. Boop. Alright. Merp. Merp. So now I think we can get a head turn in here that's a little bit more turny. Alright, so that's starting to look a little bit better. Boop. So let's have him come out of that movement a little bit slower. Boop. I'm gonna detach his head again, where he starts moving here. So it takes a little second to look around, get an exit strategy, and we can force this to happen a little slower as well. Bring these guys back here. His torso's lagging. So he just needs a little bit of keep alive here. With this part, he's got some downward movement. That's from this guy up here, I'd say. Bloop. So what we're basically doing is rebuilding this keyframe, because the last keyframe just wasn't cutting it. Just wasn't doing a good job. So I'm gonna bring his shoulders around a little bit. His turn is a little bit more whole body. It's not just the head moving on its own. I have him later. Bloop. There you go. So he looks over, looks back, and makes his getaway. Got a little bit of a quick look around. And then he's like, nope. That could even be more pushed. Right now he's doing this. We could bring this arc way down. Oh, that's an ugly frame. But his chin is coming down, across, and then up. So the arc itself is not wrong. I just feel like it's not great. So here, instead of his head coming down, I think we should have his head come around. That makes sense. So let's just force it to do that farther over. So it's almost like his head is a tail, if that makes sense. And then comes up around. This one, we're gonna need his face to be a little bit more towards center. So we don't want it to turn too fast. And I want his head to drag a lot too. Because his head is massive, so I feel like it should have some drag in there. It might look terrible, but it just, it feels like a fun idea to go through the motions here. Whoop. No, it doesn't look too terrible. I think him coming so close to, so down next to his shoulder so early, maybe even hold it up for her higher. Higher, longer, faster, maybe. So this, we don't want it to be so. Yep. Yep. Alright, so that's looking a little bit better. He's got that. He needs a little bit of keep alive between here and here. I feel like his shoulders will come up first. So I'm trying to get a little bit of contrast in this pose and the next pose. So he's going to come up a little bit before he goes down. Watch out for that little arm in the back there, this little vestigial arm. Gotta make sure none of that is poking out in weird places. That's some little details to keep an eye on. This guy down here is going a little bit crazy. Pelvis is running away faster than his body is. What does that say about who he's running away from? Alright, so I'm getting some of this keep alive in here, and I want to have his eyes really darty here. I'm going to throw in a single frame halfway afterwards, because it's going to be a single frame of swooshy eye like this. Oop. So you need to have a keyframe afterwards so that it has the end position, and then before that I'm going to put in a swoosh like that. And then I'm going to have him looking more towards the up a little bit. He's looking at the floor there. Always think about what he's looking at. So even if you don't know what he's looking at here, I'll pretend he's looking at the stairs to get out of the subway. Dirty eyes over, dirty eyes back. So I think he'd hold them over there as long as he could, and then once he turned his eyes here, this is where the swoosh would be, so I'm going to put in a keyframe here, and then I'm going to go and grab a swoosh. And this is one place to remember that if you hold your middle mouse button, you don't actually need to select exactly on the item that you're working on. Alt will rotate, Control will squish. I find it a little bit tricky to do the squish with, because I use my Cintiq pen, and I've got this button here, the back button, as middle mouse, so I've got right click and middle mouse here on my Cintiq pen, and that gives me the ability to grab simple things like this and then move them around without having to go and tediously find them. It's super good for mouse animators. Okay, his body is going a little bit too much because it's just copy of the post. Shimmy, 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 shimmy. So that's weird. And I'll just disconnect the head. And instead of him going all the way back to his beginning pose, I'm going to grab the halfway point and then have him slow out a little bit there. See if that's too much. I might need just a held pose there and just his head moving, but... Alright, so there he's kept alive a little bit, but he's not doing a full back and forth shimmy. But he's starting to get a little bit more rhythm. So he's like, nah, let's look for an out. Merp. I might actually want that pose just one more frame. So here, I think this whole head needs to be a little bit more. So instead of just the eye swooshy, I'm going to put in a head swooshy. A little bit swooshier. So on fast movements like this, you may feel compelled to throw in a couple ones if you're working on twos, and that's totally a reasonable thing to do, is switch back and forth. If it's just not fast enough, even though you're switching things and kind of playing around with it, then don't be afraid to throw a one in there. I'm trying to get a little bit more of this poof happening. I feel like I'm just gonna have to do a poof pass. Hair poof. This is something I like doing straight ahead. So I may even clear out an entire chunk of keys just so I can go back and edit this poof and make sure it's working exactly the way I want it to. Get that movement in there. That might be my Fex blood coming out. See, just getting that little poof swoosh. Starting to drag a little bit there. That feels nice. I like that. Alright, so that was a pretty substantial change, but it's a lot better. So I'm going to play the whole thing with the couple changes I made. I only changed two little things. So here I fixed this. Boop, boop, boop. So I made that a little bit nicer in between there. And then over here, I made a pretty big change on this bit. All right, so those are the two changes I made. So here's the original. After I made the changes. So I've had this a little under an hour, maybe 50 minutes. So if I had to spend an hour, I knew, okay, I only have an hour before my deadline, but my supervisor told me that the piece needs to be punched up a little bit. This is what I would do. I'd go in and grab the worst of things, like the boringest of things. Because if the boring parts are boring, that's okay, right? But if the fun parts are boring, the turns, like the big movements are boring, then what have you got left? All right, so the next step I'm going to do is add in the little typies, and I'll polish up this look. So look at this back arm. Ooh. So what do we need? We need typey, 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 and we need to improve this walk. That walk is just bad. All right, so the walk is worse. The walk is worse than not having typing, so that's our next goal. All right, so let's just drag this over here. We can take off our translation. So here's our guy walking away. You can see, oh, it's super bad when you just watch it over here. So I want to get these shoulders working. This shoulder's dead in the, their shoulder's just dead in the water in general. So I think what I'm going to do is be aggressive again. I'm going to keep his face because I do have some eye shifts and some whistles stuff happening. Because it's right in the middle of my way, I'm going to add an extra peg here, and I'm just going to throw this stuff up out of the way. So once I plug it back in, I'll just take the head peg and replace it over the features, getting rid of this alternative peg. This is why knowing your network a little bit, getting more comfortable in there is going to save you time in the long run. What is that? This guy has a limp and he has no legs. Oh, Tracy, your laziness is showing. Hopefully this has given you some ideas for polishing your own pieces and not being afraid to really just destroy keys and disconnect stuff and hack job it. Just save a version. So I didn't save a version because this is just for my own amusement and yours. But if you even just copying this, pasting it in template library, and then just stripping out keys, not being afraid to really overhaul some stuff, force things into a better place, have a few swooshy keys in there, get some stretch in there, get some follow through on stuff like the poof. This can definitely, the poof itself could use a whole pass just for itself because I feel like the poof is like its own little creature living on his head. That's as far as I'm going to take it for this video. I'm not sure what my next few videos are going to be. I do want to do some more book club. I've got some books for you guys. I want to do some more interviews. I've got some friends I've been suggesting that maybe they should show up on here, so stay tuned for that. And I have a website I'm working on, which is mainly going to be a portfolio website to include my stuff, but it's going to have blog posts about the books that I love and things like that. And I'm going to make a resource page where I collect as many 2D resources as I can in one place. So if you have any suggestions of your favorite 2D resources, by all means send that to me on Facebook or Twitter or on here. YouTube's a little cranky about links, but it does show it to me, even if it claims that you're spam. I think I should have time for a weekend video, but I don't know what it will be. But thanks for dropping by and sticking it out to the end. Thanks for dropping by. Like, share, subscribe, all those things internet people ask you to do, and I'll see you in the next video.